So, I like this show. Oh shit. I probably shouldn't have said that right off the bat, since I just lost half my viewers by giving the TLDR right at the start. But for those of you who have stuck around, thanks. I do have an entire video planned. There's a lot I want to talk about concerning this series, with its quirky sense of humor, enjoyable cast, and underlying themes that reinforce the narrative. And with that, I certainly just lost the rest of you. Oh well, I've made it this far, so... Zombieland Saga. Spoilers ahead. Adapted from absolutely nothing, Zombieland Saga is an entirely original property thrust right into the anime production grinder. Produced by Games and Avex Pictures with animation provided by MAPPA, the series has some serious financial backing to make it a success. Now, it may seem a bit odd that a game dev with experience primarily in mobile games and a studio heavily connected to the music production industry would want to come together to produce an idol anime, and looking through the game company's catalog should immediately inform you of their reasoning. But honestly, whoever wrote the checks and their reasoning behind it doesn't matter as long as the final product is good. And hey, surprise, surprise, it is. Which is why credit should be given to the staff who worked on the production itself. Sakai Munehisa manages to stick out to me as the director. He's a seasoned veteran that most have probably never heard of, a man who's had the thankless job of steering the Straw Hat Pirates through their adventures on the Grand Line. A large portion of his work as a director was spent as the series director for One Piece, for like over 100 episodes or something like that. And besides that, he's also directed the 2014 Sailor Moon series and Sweet Precure. His experience is certainly on display with this series, showing how masterfully the final product comes together. But I'd be remiss in this review if I pretended that the director was the sole person responsible for the success on display here. The series composer, a position that has more influence on an original property than on a standard adaptation, is certainly worth a mention. Murakoshi Shigeru to date only has 2 head writer credits to his name, this, and at the time of this recording, the as of yet aired Katsute Kamidata Kemono Tachie. However, having a few episode director credits under his belt for shows that I'm currently watching, I'd say he has an excellent eye for story composition by handling some of the more emotionally impactful episodes of Eigao no Daika and Dororo. So while he's new to the scene, I certainly have high hopes for the level of talent he's displayed thus far. And in a comedy role, the main cast are assuredly important. Delivery of the lines and conveying the excitement and tone well is a key component to that. And without a doubt, Miyano Mamoru is having a blast in his role as the producer Kotaro. Tano Asami and Hondo Kaede spring to mind as particularly enjoyable performances as Saki and Sakura respectively, though that's not to say the rest of the cast isn't having fun as well, giving excellent performances that distinguish each character in tone and delivery, which is saying a lot since the majority of the cast doesn't have a ton of voice acting experience outside of the industry veterans Taneda Risa and Mitsuishi Kotono, so they definitely deserve my praise. But what else do you expect when you have a great script with a solid studio backing it, a seasoned director at the wheel, and a cast of talented actors? So diving into the series proper, let's cover the basic plot so I don't lose all 2 of you still sticking around. The series opens with our main protagonist, Minamoto Sakura, a delightful girl self-described as a bit of a klutz as she dances along with a routine on television. Establishing her goal right off the bat, she grabs an application and heads out the door, immediately getting hit by a passing truck as she says how her life's going to be filled with thrills and excitement from that day forward. As soon as she hits the ground, we transition into a creepy old mansion where Sakura is immediately attacked by a zombie. She runs for her life, stumbling into a room full of high school girl zombies, narrowly avoiding them until she gets out of the house. Now at this point, you'll be forgiven for thinking you accidentally stumbled into a horror show with the atmosphere and sound design, but you'd be wrong. After escaping, she finds a police officer. When she gets his attention, rather than helping her, he freaks the fuck out and pulls a gun on her. She sees her reflection in a mirror, realizing that she looks like a zombie herself. Suddenly, she's shot and falls to the ground. The police officer gets knocked out, and she's dragged back to the mansion by a mysterious guy in sunglasses with a little zombie puppy. He gives Sakura the lowdown that she's been dead for 10 years and all the other zombies, though not conscious yet, are going to form an idol group to save the Saga Prefecture of Japan. Now, that might sound absolutely absurd to you, having literally any grasp on reality at all, and it is. Sakura thinks that's a dumb idea since she's a zombie and the other girls are just mindless corpses. I mean, what could they do? Besides, she doesn't have any memories of her life until that point. Kotaro, being Kotaro, literally gives no fucks and puts them on stage that very night at a heavy metal concert. Using his Hollywood makeup skills, he gives the girls convincing disguises. They go on stage, perform to some heavy metal music, with Sakura screaming her lungs out as they all headbang like adorable little metalheads. That feeling awakens something in Sakura, like past regrets that being on stage like that was something she always wanted to do. The live ends in failure with the zombies attacking the audience and the girls getting packed up to go home. The next day after their first live performance, all the girls, except for the running gag character Tai, wake up like Sakura. We have Saki, a boisterous biker chick who once ruled Saga with her gang, Junko, an idol from the 80s experiencing some serious culture shock, Ai, an idol from the late aughts and from the band Sakura admired when she was alive, Lily, a former child actor who wants to stay young forever, dying of shock from puberty and her heart literally leaping out of her chest as part of her visual design to remind us of that, and Yugiri, a courtesan from the late 1800s, presumably beheaded, indicated by her neck scar. Each of these girls get quite the bit of personality fleshed out through their interactions, and some have entire episodes devoted to them. But for now, I want to focus on Sakura and get through the main plot of the series. With the girls now awake, Sakura has the task of reining in their clashing personalities. Saki, for instance, doesn't like the whole situation and doesn't respect Sakura for trying to force them to go along with Kotaro's decision to be idols. Her choosing to do so because of how she felt after that first live being the thing that might give her her memories back. At their next live, Sakura and Saki get into an argument on stage that turns into an impromptu rap battle with Sakura coming out as the winner, gaining audience approval and Saki's respect at the same time. With Saki on board, Lily, Yugiri, and Tai are all willing to give the idol thing a shot, so the girls try to do an unannounced street performance to drum up some fans quickly. They get their actual name in order, Fran Shushu, and practice a legitimate idol song and dance. This is where the series breaks away from its sightseeing tour of music genres for a bit to focus on straight-up pop music. Ai and Junko are reluctant to help since they don't see the point in any of it, but when Sakura stumbles during their performance, they jump in to help, saving it at the last second for the literally one little girl still watching. After that, everyone's on board, so the group starts to earn some money. They take jobs as entertainment for a company's resort visit and doing a commercial for Drive-In Tori, which is an actual legit restaurant in the real world where the owner voiced himself in this anime. That's just a neat piece of trivia, and the series is filled with a ton of stuff like that, acting as a sort of love letter to Saga itself. These start to build them a fan base, eventually landing a gig at a massive concert. There's a rift formed between Ai and Junko, driving the two of them apart due to a generational gap between them on how idols should act. Ai's old band is also performing at that concert too, but most of all, there's a storm that day. Ai, dying in a freak lightning strike, is scared of thunderstorms as a result. Right before the big show, Kotaro brings Junko back in line with a motivational speech, and she supports Ai at the big event, helping her snap out of her fear so they can finish their song. As they finish, a lightning bolt strikes the stage and surely would have killed any other band performing, but Francishu is already dead. So they do another song on the blasted stage, shooting lasers out of their fingers and making a great story for the papers. That leads to a massive boom in their business. They continue to perform shows, with Lily's dad taking notice of the band eventually. He shows up at one of their shows asking if that's really Lily. She denies it, but it still affects her since she sees her dad blames himself for her death. To help put him at ease, they do a special show and invite him for a send-off. Saki meets up with her old biker gang in shambles after her death. Her former friend is now middle-aged and settled down with her own kid that's trying to keep the gang alive despite her mother's protests. Saki snaps the kid out of it before she ends up doing the exact same thing that Saki did that got her killed, reenacting her death right in front of the kids and her old friend. But this time, she climbs out of the flaming wreckage and invites them to a concert. Eventually, all this success lands them at a solo concert in a massive hall. With that, they train, getting in tip-top shape, but Sakura stresses about it because she absolutely will not let their show fail. Her constant need to practice and push everyone harder eventually makes Kotaro put them on a mountain to survive as a team-building experience. When they come back, Sakura realizes his goal and apologizes for being dumb. But right as she goes to leave for a quick morning run after saying how great practice has been, she gets hit by a truck once more. This brings back her old memories, but she loses the ones from when she was a zombie. Turns out Sakura's pretty damn depressed since every time she's ever tried to do something good with her life, she screws it up by being unlucky. Her last thing, trying to join an idol group, ended with her dying. Her friends eventually get her to snap out of it partially, at least convincing her to perform because their entire group was already dead. That means they're all pretty unlucky anyway since they died young. At the big show, things do go wrong with the stage collapsing, but Sakura gets her memories of being a zombie back and they finish the show with a big flourish. And if you had any doubts that this was a comedy show, the opening is willing to put it to rest. It's an energetic poppy jazz affair that's a blast with all these horns. I can't help but feel the whole thing is supposed to be cheesy with these grandiose shots and silly sound effects to the action. Yes, those are actually part of the song. Not to mention it does absolutely nothing to convey the story of the show itself, but there's a ton of silly imagery mixed with even more references. The entire Sentai battle scene is fantastic simply because of how absurd it is. Maybe I'm reaching, but it feels like a Saturday morning cartoon interlude, even referencing comics. It's definitely telling you this show isn't meant to be taken 100% seriously, which is great, because when it does take itself seriously, it's a treat. Though I will say the music itself isn't much of a draw, and I'm not going to seek it out for its own merits. So what I really wanted to talk about with this series, which makes it stand out among a sea of other idol anime, is how it utilizes its most defining feature. The main idol girls in this series are all zombies, cut down in their prime by accidents, trauma, or other means. That is, in essence, the gimmick of the show. But where this would have easily been merely mentioned with zero bearing on the characters for another show, or maybe used for a gag a few times, in this production it offers some unique insight to the mentality of the characters and their prospects. All the characters in this series had dreams or ambitions, hopes that were taken away from them at the instant of their deaths. So when they find themselves conscious again, it's their chance to make their failed or previously lost dreams come true. Ai, who was a climbing star in the idol world, and Junko, who was at the peak of her success, have a chance to regain what they lost. Ai in particular doesn't want to be forgotten so easily. Saki, a girl who thought she'd rule the entire world with her biker gang, reasons she can do that now as an idol. Lily, a child star who never wanted to grow up, is now an ageless zombie and can become famous once more as an idol. Yugiri is just along for the ride, it seems, since she died over 100 years ago at the point this story takes place. And Sakura, a perpetually unlucky girl who wished to turn her life around, finds that chance in the afterlife. These girls aren't ready to call it quits yet, so once the initial shock and depression of being dead wears off, they come out of the situation with their raw ambition to fuel them. This is turning a convention on its head where zombies are typically seen as scary or terrifying things, and using the chance that offers them to make themselves happy. Basically an optimistic take on nihilism. Nothing matters to them anymore, so they might as well do what they can to make themselves happy. Which in itself offers an uplifting message for the audience to get emotionally invested in. To always try your best. I think the comedy underscores this with slapsticky scenes with the girls getting dismembered cartoonishly with zero gore, or how them trying hard at something often ends with failure to their annoyance. Even the humor relishes in this nihilistic aspect. I just wish I could bring myself to apply it to my own life. Honestly, this isn't something one would expect to see in a zombie show, being so deeply rooted in horror and dark genres. And that's the true genius of this series, twisting something that would make people depressed into a hopeful message. And that doesn't even begin to touch on the issues each character deals with aside from being undead, like coping with their own deaths and overcoming the fears such traumas induced. Specifically Ai, struck by lightning in the most improbable of circumstances in the middle of a massive live show, she developed a fear of it upon coming back. It affects her performance, and overcoming that fear thanks to the support from her group makes for a compelling moment. For starters, it's a believable issue, having killed her already, but also that it's endearing to the audience, since until that point she felt like a strong-willed veteran who could handle anything with a professional demeanor. Sakura's journey is a bit more complex. Her life before the start of the series was marred by misfortune, mostly minor things like spraining her ankle, getting sick before a school play, almost missing an exam and stressing about it to the point she failed. But all of these left a lasting impact on her perspective, that even though she was good at sports or smart, luck always seemed to work against her, preventing her from shining. Since all these efforts went to waste every time she applied herself, to the point she'd often shirk social interaction, she started to feel it was basically her fate to get shit on by the universe. This leads her into depression, but seeing an idol on TV and hearing how even that idol fails, but every time she tries to get back up and do it again, Sakura decides to give it one last shot. She goes to submit an application to join an idol group before her tragic death. And no, luckily she wasn't reincarnated into another world by Truck-kun. Otherwise, I probably would have loathed this series. But in death, she found a place. She found a reason to exist in the zombie idol group, accomplishing her goal only after her death. Which is a bit of a running motif in this series if you haven't noticed, that despite how unlucky these girls are, they're able to get up and push towards their dreams. And that's flat out stated in the opening theme song. It's nice to see a motivational message like this from a series so ready to relish in dark themes like death and dark comedy. Some complaints I have are minor, like it's hard to tell what's a parody in this series. When first watching it, the CG models used in the idol group routines in episode 3 were pretty comical, to the point I thought it was a parody of low-quality Miku Miku dance videos. Since the series to that point had dabbled in a few musical genres, it seemed like they were trying to take a satirical approach to just about everything. But when it kept getting reused, it looked progressively worse with each appearance due to the lower and lower frame rates of each sequence. Its inclusion is jarring enough on its own, but the lower frame rate doesn't help. I say this often, but CG used to save money does make sense simply due to the fact that models can be reused after creation. So I get why, but it still doesn't change that it looks bad. Especially when the rest of the animation is so smooth, along with energetic and expressive. It just makes the dance scenes stand out as particularly egregious. The overarching plot of this series isn't particularly strong, but the characters certainly carry it for me. Definitely a great series worth a look if you're into dark comedies, idol anime, touching personal stories, odd premises, or anything else really. This series has a little something for everyone, I feel. So definitely check it out if you're an everyone. Which, by this point, according to my calculations, should be literally no one left watching this video.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and do all the other YouTube stuff because that really helps me out. Thanks for watching.